Hello, so my name is Holly Smith. I'm a GP in East Sheffield, and I'm also the chair of Greener Practice, which is an organisation that helps GPs to reduce their carbon footprint and reduce the carbon footprint of their healthcare. The climate and ecological crisis is a health crisis. It's the greatest health crisis that humanity has ever faced. So it's incredibly important that we as doctors are working towards reducing our carbon footprint and doing everything we can to support people to reduce their carbon footprint. And so today I'm going to talk about one aspect of something we can do that helps both our own health and the health of the planet at the same time. And that is to talk about periods without plastic, or possibly not having periods at all, which I'll come on to. Now, if you're already feeling a bit of an ick factor about talking about periods, I'm just going to say that we're only here because women have fertility cycles. We're all here as a result of that. And part of the fertility cycle is periods. So if you don't like it, get over it, because there's nothing wrong with talking about periods. They're a normal process, and we just need to get real about that and be okay about talking about it. So first of all, I'm going to talk about the problem with period products as they are at the moment, the disposable tampons and pads that women use. Now, I'm going to, as much as possible, say people of the female sex, but if I occasionally say women, I apologise for that. It's just an easier shorthand, but I hope you'll understand that that's not in any way to denigrate or disrespect people who are trans. But people of the female sex are biologically programmed to have periods for nearly 40 years. That's on average about 9,000 to 10,000 tampons or pads for each person having periods. And the carbon dioxide emissions of a year's worth of tampons and pads for any one person who's having periods is 8.9 kilograms. That's about 1,000 mobile phone charges. And if you multiply that up, that's 356 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions for every menstruating person over the 40 years of the fact that they're having cycles. And that's about 1,000 miles in a petrol car. And added to that is the problem that the plastics in disposable period products don't biodegrade. So the first question is, flush or bin? You might want to stop and have a word with your neighbour about what you think is the right answer, whether to flush tampons and pads or whether to bin them. So I wonder if you're planning to go somewhere nice on your holidays this year. That looks rather lovely, doesn't it? Lovely, beautiful beach, beautiful sea. All looks very idyllic. But if you flush your tampons and pads, it might end up looking more like that beach. So in 2004, the Ocean Conservancy's International Coastal Cleanup Programme collected around 18,000 used tampons and applicators from beaches around the world, which had been dumped on the shores or had washed up from the sea. And that was in one single day. So flushing them away, not only does it block drains, but it also causes a huge amount of ocean pollution and beach pollution. So that's not really an option. So, okay, let's bin them. What happens if we bin them? Well, the problem with binning them is that landfill produces methane. And methane is a greenhouse gas that's 80 times more powerful than carbon dioxide in its first 20 years of production. So this is the gift that keeps on giving, isn't it? You dump your tampons and your pads in that pile, and they're going to produce an awful lot of greenhouse gases that make our world a more a warmer and more dangerous place. So what's the answer? Which is better, flushing or at least which is less bad, I think I should say, really? Well, the answer is bin them. Don't put them down the toilet. All right. In Sheffield, we have an energy recovery facility where all our household waste is incinerated, and that produces energy for Sheffield. Now, I'm not going to argue that that's a great solution. It isn't. It sounds great, but it really isn't, because we would do much better if you produce far less waste in the first place. But if we have to have disposable pads and Tampax, it's better for them to go into the bin so that they can be incinerated and produce energy for Sheffield. Even in areas where there isn't an incinerator for the city, it's still better for them to go into landfill than down the toilet. But neither option is good. And wouldn't it be so much better if we could reduce the amount of waste in the first place? So, as I say, the problem with sanitary protection is that disposable sanitary protection has a lot of plastic in it. 90% of the menstrual pad is plastic and 6% of a tampon is plastic. So tampons are much better, but they still have some plastics in them. So it's a problem if we're going to use disposables. And we can look for organic, eco-friendly alternatives. Organic pads aren't going to be hugely better. They'll be better in terms of the carbon emissions of the organic material, but not in terms of plastic. So I'm going to play you a short video now from a wonderful film called I, Daniel Blake by Ken Loach, which some of you may have seen. If you haven't seen it, I would really recommend it, because it's about people living on the benefit system and how difficult that is for people. And it's a really important piece of social history. But this is a clip from the film that demonstrates an additional issue with period products.
That's your change and your receipt. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Bye. Bye.
Excuse me, madam. I think you've been shoplifting. Would you like to come with me to the manager's office and we can sort it out?
I'm in shoplifting.
Okay, you have, and I've seen you, so if you'd like to come with me...
No, I've got a receipt. The lady there, she served
and if
me.
everything on your receipt is all you've got on you, then there's no problem. If you'd just like to come this way at the manager's office, please.
No, I'm not going to the manager's office. You
Okay,
just
look,
stood
I
there
can
and
lock the
watched
door.
the ladies just served me
I
and
can
I've
lock
got a
the door
receipt.
and call the police if that's what you'd like.
Talking about locking the door and calling the police.
Okay, would you like to come with me to the manager's office,
No, because
please?
you've just watched me...
Okay, and we'll sort that out, okay? And if everything on the receipt's in your bags, then there's no
you
problem.
don't need to shout at me.
Okay, if you'd like to come this way.
You've just stood there and watched
and we'll sort it out.
serve me, didn't you? And she's given me a receipt.
Just this way.
Ivan, I'll take it from you.
Right.
What's your name, love?
Katie.
Katie?
Katie Morgan.
Katie Morgan.
I'm really sorry. I haven't done anything like this before. I paid for these.
So Katie stole those products because she couldn't afford to buy period products. Period products are have value-added tax added, which is a tax that's added to luxury items. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't consider having periods to be a luxury, and I hope you don't either. And of course, austerity has meant that many people can't afford, they have to make choices between feeding themselves and heating their homes or having period products. So I want you just to spend a few minutes just thinking together about how that would feel for Katie, what would have been going through her mind, how she would have been feeling, how it would feel for you if you couldn't afford to have period products, and then we'll carry on. So period poverty affects 1 in 10 people who have periods who can't afford to buy menstrual products in the UK. And that's resulted in nearly 140,000 children in the UK having missed school on at least one occasion because of not being able to afford period products. Menstrual products cost around £13 every month, and that's about £18,000 during a person's lifetime of having periods over 40 years. And surveys have shown that many girls were really embarrassed to talk about periods or period products, or afraid to ask for help because of the stigma attached. So we need to think about alternatives to disposable period products, because there are cheaper and better options that help the planet, as well as helping people who live in period poverty, or just anybody really who might be able to benefit from reusable period products. So the first of these is period pants. Now those look like normal pants to me. They don't look any different really from normal pants that you wear, but they are very different because they have several absorbent layers in them, of which the middle layer is the one that catches all the period blood. They are odor-free and very effective at preventing leaks. The top layer is breathable so that you stay sort of dry and it doesn't cause any odor. So really, really good solution to period poverty. So every pair of period pants can replace 200 disposable items. They're 6 times smaller in their carbon footprint compared to pads, and 4 times less compared to tampons. And if 15 million people who had periods in the UK switched to period pants, we'd save about 4.2 million tonnes of carbon dioxide each year. And that's more than 2.5 million return economy class flights from London to New York. And my rather amateur drawing has put a little washing line of period pants along the tail of that plane. Another option is a menstrual cup. So a menstrual cup is a little silicone cup that sits in the vagina and catches the menstrual blood. And the fantastic thing about these is that they last for years and years and years. So they hold about 3 times as much blood as a regular tampon, so they don't need changing as often. They can pay for themselves within 6 to 8 months. They cost about 20-something pounds if you have to buy it. Many schools give out menstrual cups free, so they don't need to cost you anything. They're found to be very comfortable. You always have it available, so when your period starts, sometimes unexpectedly, you don't have to dash off to the shops. You've got your menstrual cup there and ready for use. And another advantage of them is that they're comfortable at all stages of the period. So when the flow isn't very heavy, sometimes tampons can feel a little bit dry and uncomfortable, but these don't. So that's really good. They sit lower in the vagina than a tampon, so they're really, really easy to put in. And they're best emptied about every 4 to 6 hours. So really convenient option. So just in financial terms, the cost of your periods, traditional pads or tampons cost something like £8 to £13 per cycle. And of course, for many people who have periods, they have them once a month. That's the most sort of normal state of affairs, although very often young people don't have periods as often as that. But the norm is to have periods every month. So that's £8 to £13 a month. Period pants cost much less than that. They cost about £5.85 per period. And the menstrual cup, because it lasts for many, many years, will just cost a few pence. And of course, if you get yours free from school, then they don't cost anything at all. But there are other options as well as reusable period products. The other thing is, do we actually need to have periods at all? So there are many types of hormonal treatment that can stop your periods because they thin down the lining of your womb. Now, these are typically, most of them are ones that we also use for contraception. Now, I have said to me in my work as a GP and in sexual health, quite frequently, people will say to me, well, it's not natural. I want to keep things natural. Well, if I tell you that the natural state of affairs for women is to be pregnant from the age that they start having periods until they stop having periods, pretty much, to be pregnant or breastfeeding throughout, and have many children, I'm sure you'll agree with me that for most people who of the female sex, that's not a very satisfactory solution, and we wouldn't want that. So actually, by adjusting our family size, by taking control of our own fertility, we've already changed that process. So, and hormones are incredibly safe. Generally speaking, hormonal contraception is safer than actually being pregnant. And the way that they stop your periods, and I'm going to talk about the types of ones that do stop your periods, the way they stop your periods is by thinning down the lining of the uterus, the lining of the womb, so that there's nothing there to shed. So nothing builds up inside, because that's another question I get asked very frequently is, does something build up inside? Well, no, nothing's building up, because we've actually suppressed that cycle so that it doesn't happen. And there's nothing to be afraid of in that. We do not, in this day and age, need to be having periods on a regular basis if we don't really want to. And that brings me on to contraception, because there are additional benefits of not having babies until you're ready. Generally speaking, it's better for your mental and physical health to plan when you want to have a baby and not embark on that before you're ready. And it's better for the planet too. We live in a very crowded country in the UK, and the planet generally is the population is going up. There are over 7 billion people in the world now, because populations have gone up exponentially, as you can see from that graph, particularly since the 1950s. The world population has absolutely mushroomed, really. And it's particularly important for us in the global north, in other words, the sort of wealthier countries, to consider the impact that we have by having children, because each of our children will consume far more than children in the global south. So that's places like Africa and India and so on, where typically the consumption levels and therefore carbon emissions will be much lower. So we have a particular responsibility to think about this, about our family size, and to have children only when we want to have children. And the best way of achieving that is with long-acting contraception. So long-acting contraception is contraception that's in place without us having to do anything about it each day. And so it's much better generally, because it doesn't require us to remember to take a pill or to use a condom, albeit that condoms are better for safer sex, but it doesn't require us to do any of those things to stay contraceptively protected. So it's the best way for most people of the female sex to achieve really good contraception and to avoid those unplanned pregnancies that cause so much suffering and heartache. And you can see that woman in the picture there who's in despair, or looks as if she's in despair because she's got a positive pregnancy test. So the first one I want to talk about is the contraceptive implant. So this is the best way of stopping pregnancies of all contraceptive methods. So it has a 0.05% failure rate. So provided you're not pregnant when it's put in, your chances of getting pregnant on it are only 5 women in 10,000 will get pregnant with the contraceptive implant in place. Most women don't have periods at all when they're using the implant. Now, some women do get unscheduled bleeding, but we can usually control that. So I wouldn't let that put you off, because we can usually make that better. But the majority of women don't have periods at all. So, of course, that cuts down on both the carbon footprint and the cost of period products. For most women, it will give 3 years of trouble-free contraception. You can't see it. That's one of the things that we frequently get asked. It's in your arm. You could feel it if you really wanted to, but nobody needs to feel it, and other people can't see it. It's really easy to put in with a very small injection. So we put a tiny little bit of local anaesthetic into your arm in a blob that's less than the size of a penny piece, and you don't feel the implant going in. And it's available at sexual health clinics, and some GPs will also fit it for you. The next method I want to talk about is the intrauterine system. So this is a tiny piece of plastic that goes inside your womb or uterus, and it gives out hormones that are on its stem, and it gives out those hormones over a 5-year period. Now that little T-shaped device goes inside a little tube, so it goes in straight, and then we take out the tube that contains it, so those arms open up and it sits just inside the womb or uterus. And most women who use that don't have any periods at all for the whole of the 5 years. Again, very occasionally women do have some light bleeding, usually not significant and not a problem. But if they do, we can usually control it. But the vast majority of women don't have any bleeding at all with the intrauterine system. It lasts for 5 years for contraception, and it is the best treatment for heavy or painful periods. Putting it in involves what's called a speculum procedure. So that's that little device that you can see, that little plastic device that goes inside the vagina. So we probably wouldn't generally recommend it for women who hadn't started having sex, but it's perfectly okay to have it even if you've never had a pregnancy. And then there's the depot injection. So that's an injection that you have into the top of your bottom, if you see what I mean, every 12 weeks. So you do need to go to the doctor or sexual health clinic every 12 weeks to renew your injection. There is also one that you can give yourself, which doctors can teach you to give into your thigh. It usually will stop your periods altogether. Again, the vast majority of women don't have periods on the depot injection. Only disadvantages of it are that it can cause weight gain in some women, although many women don't put on weight with it, but that can be an issue. But it can be used in young people if other long-acting methods of contraception are not acceptable to the person. The reason we're slightly hesitant about it with young people is that it can potentially cause thinning of the bones. And because young people are still putting on, increasing their bone mass, in other words, they're still making bone, we don't want to stop that happening. But it can be used if that seems to be the best method for the young person. If none of those long-acting methods seems attractive, then there is always the option of the combined oral contraceptive pill. And the combined pill is really effective for helping with painful or heavy periods. Now, the traditional way of taking the combined pill is to have 3 weeks of taking it and then 7 days off each month. And that's because it sort of mimics the normal cycle that women are used to. But there's actually no reason why people have to stop it every 3 weeks for a 7-day bleed, because the bleed that you have on the combined pill is not a period. It's what we call a withdrawal bleed, a pill-free interval bleed. And we now know that there's absolutely no reason why you have to do that. So you can take the pill for 9 weeks continuously and then have 1 week off, during which you will have a short bleed, which again, as I say, will tend to be light and usually not painful. We do usually recommend a slight break every 9 weeks, because otherwise sometimes people get unscheduled bleeding. In other words, we can't really predict when it's going to happen. But it does hugely reduce the number of periods you need to have. It's less safe contraception than the contraceptive implant or the intrauterine system or the depot, in fact. But if it's taken properly, it still works well to prevent pregnancy in the vast majority of cases. But it is incredibly important that you take it correctly, and your doctor would teach you some tricks to help you remember how to take it. If you stop taking the pill, or if you don't flush any unused pills down the toilet, because estrogens in the water can affect the fertility of boys. So I hope you're listening, boys, on that one, because it can affect the fertility of men and of animals. So it's incredibly important you do not flush any unused tablets down the toilet. And also there's empty packs. When you finish the pack and you've got those blistery packs there, they can go back to a lot of super drug stores who recycle them. so that's a way of reducing the carbon footprint further of the medication. So just to finish off, if you're struggling to buy period products, try and find somebody that you trust, a teacher that you like and trust to talk to about it. You might feel embarrassed about it, but the teacher won't be embarrassed. The teacher will understand and will help you and support you and give you pads, which many schools will keep in. They'll probably be disposable pads, but obviously nobody wants you to be struggling with that at school. And you can always get a menstrual cup. Many schools will give those out. And contraception and help with your periods are available from your GP or sexual health clinic. So all medical care is free to children under 16 and under 18 who are still at school. Contraception is always free, and help with your periods when you're under 16, or as I say, under 18 at school, and at school will be free. And if it's a contraceptive product that is prescribed for you, that will be free anyway. And even if you're not ready for period pants at the moment, or menstrual cups, if those feel like something that you don't fancy at the moment, which I could understand, don't rule it out for the future, because it might seem, when you're a little bit older, it might seem like a really good idea. So remember them for later. And if you think at any point in your life you might use a menstrual cup, get one free from school. And likewise, if you're not quite ready for contraception yet, just bear in mind there are lots of options for stopping your periods if you want those methods later in life. And even if you don't want them now, tell other people in your life about them, other people who have periods, because they might be really glad to hear about more ecologically friendly, environmentally friendly ways of having periods or not having periods that might help them, and also might help them not to have unplanned pregnancies. So talk about these things. These are win-win solutions, okay? So reusable period products save you money and also save the planet, and they help prevent period poverty, which is a cause of mental and emotional distress for women. It's best to prevent that if we can. And long-acting contraception is best for helping you not to have a pregnancy until you want one, which is also better for the planet as well. Thank you for listening.